All right. Joining us now, Speaker Emerita, Democratic Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi of California. Madam Speaker, it's wonderful to have you on the show this morning. Obviously, we have a lot to talk to you about, especially as it pertains to women's rights and a special day that we're noting today. But I first have to ask you, given our top story, your reaction to former President Trump receiving the target letter as it pertains to January 6th.
Well, and the fact is, no one is above the law. And as the vice president said, well, politics will take care of this. No one is above the law. As one who was there and a victim of January 6th, I hope that justice will be done. We pled with the president to send the National Guard. He did not. We pled with him to call off his folks that he was inciting. He did not. But again, this is about the facts and the law. No one is above it. He is innocent until proven guilty. That's in the courts, and I don't have anything more to say about that. I am happy to be on the show with Daniel Silva. That's pretty exciting. I can't wait to see the collector bill. I can't wait to see the collector bill because I have 30 years of intelligence as a member, as a top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, ex officio as leader and speaker for 30 years. So I'm very eager to see how he has written this up. And of course, I have real stand. You have to know this. If I were in the SCIF, the room where you go to get intelligence, and I wrote down a couple of names that I heard in a presentation, just so that I had the names straight, I couldn't take that piece of paper out of the room. I would have to hand it in to be put into a box or something that I could have access to, but I could never take even my own handwritten spelling of three names or one name out of the room. So there's a lot that needs to be addressed here. But again, it's in the court of law. I don't think it's appropriate for me to be talking about that, except to say that I'm so glad that they are also checking into the documents, and also January 6th. Of course, that relates to overthrowing the results of an election. But I just think we're just talking too much about Donald Trump. So let's get back to the fact that this is the 175th anniversary of the Seneca Convention, where women came together, one good man, Frederick Douglass, came together to declare not only are all men created equal, but all men and women are created equal and entitled to their rightful roles in our society. So it's 175 years today. Imagine the courage it took for those women to leave home, some without needing permission from their husbands, fathers, or whatever to do so, some going without that. And we're still fighting. Since then, we have expanded freedom in our country for women, eventually the right to vote, other protections for women and the rest, until 1 year ago, the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And so we have work to do.
We should mention Speaker Emerita Pelosi has a new piece published just this morning for MSNBC.com. The title is, "It's been 175 years since history was made at Seneca Falls, and we're still fighting." And in it, you write about the courage it took for this group of visionary women who met in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848, speaking openly about issues of discrimination, disenfranchisement, and domestic violence. You then highlight some of the gains that women have made since then, but you go on to write, quote, "Yet outrageously, our centuries-long march toward gender justice was abruptly halted last summer when the Republican supermajority on the Supreme Court took a wrecking ball to women's health freedom. For the first time in our history, girls growing up today have less freedom than their mothers. Democrats will not rest until the rights of Roe are restored for all. At the same time, Women still face too many barriers in the workplace. Gender justice starts with finally achieving equal pay for equal work. And we must ease the burden of caregiving that falls disproportionately on women by investing in the expanded child tax credit, universal child care, paid family and medical leave, home health care services, and more. This is imperative, the ongoing work of the Biden-Harris administration. So I would like to ask you, though, because personally I feel really scared for our women and girls in terms of women's health rights. What is the way forward? Because it does feel like we are completely turning around and going backwards in time.
Well, one would think that in terms of this court. But elections have ramifications. And this Republican House right now, can you imagine, not one of them voted for our Women's Health Act, the Judy Chu legislation, which would enshrine Roe v. Wade as law of the land. 3 of them voted for women to be able to travel from one state to the next in order to have access to reproductive health care. 8 of them, 8 members of the Republican House of Representatives, out of 222, whatever they have, 222, 8 of them voted to have women have access to contraception. So this is complete disrespect for women. And it is, as I say, women, they're not for birth control, but they are for controlling women. So we just have to make sure that women speak up. And it's not partisan. This is about women coming together and speaking up. And what women saw when they marched the day after what's-his-name's inauguration is showing up counts for a lot. Showing up, women marched, women ran, and women voted, women won. We have to do that again. It is absolutely essential. And by the way, this is Bidenomics. This is Bidenomics. President Biden had, people ask me, how did it feel when you were sitting there with a woman vice president of the United States, woman speaker of the House, when the president made the State of the Union address? I said, but it's exciting. I love Kamala. She's a Californian, and we watched her career. We're so proud of her. But what was really exciting was the speech that the president made for all the things that you mentioned: Biden child tax credit, family and medical leave, equal pay for equal work, home health care workers, so that women could rightfully take their role in the workplace. And when women succeed, we believe America succeeds. So thank you, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, for their leadership, but also the Democrats in the Congress. Unfortunately, so far, that's about, we'd like it to be bipartisan. We have to make sure that when women vote, they make sure that who they vote for know what they care about.
I mean, isn't it remarkable, though, Republicans understand, they have to understand the political consequences, Madam Speaker, of their extreme position. So when 10-year-old girls have to flee the state of Ohio after they've been raped, when you have candidates talking about how girls being raped by their uncles are perfect examples of why there aren't any exceptions. In Wisconsin, you have an complete abortion ban going back to 1849 that Republicans keep on the book. And yet they get wiped out in Wisconsin. They get wiped out in Kansas. They lose in Kentucky. They lose in these red states. And yet they can't seem to help themselves. They stay with these extreme positions. And I think it's safe to call them extreme positions when 90% of Americans are opposed to abortion laws that have no exceptions for rape, incest, life of the mother. I mean, it's extreme. Do you not see any movement among your Republican peers in the House and a growing understanding that they are in the extremist part of the American electorate?
Well, thank you for spelling it out that way. We had a big victory in Wisconsin, as you alluded to, and Judge Janet, well, take office soon. And so we hope that that will help us, because redistricting has a lot to do with this. You know, in the last election, people said we were going to lose 40 seats because I was incorrectly focusing on women's right to choose, on democracy, on climate, on gun violence protection. They said that's not the issue. And what did we lose? We lost 5 seats. We lost 5 seats in New York, but we won in the rest of the country because Roe v. Wade was not, as our Democratic even opponents were saying, is in the rearview mirror. Roe v. Wade was front and central to women in terms of their well-being. It's a health issue, it's an economic issue, it's a respect issue, and the rest. And women know. And so, again, when women vote, women win, and women's ideas. And, again, we don't want this to be partisan. I keep saying, take back your party, Joe, to Republicans. Take back your party. This is a grand old party. It had been part of Planned Parenthood right from the start, environmental protection right from the start. And what is it gone on to be a cult to a thug? But that's a whole other issue. I don't want to talk about him. But thank you so much, Mika, for your promotion of women and success of women and showcasing so much of that. But yes, again, when women succeed, America succeeds, or any country succeeds. We're talking about women in Afghanistan. I wear their ring close to my heart. Women in Iran, women in Ukraine who are rape is becoming a weapon of war. This whole disrespect for women is something that is really connected, and it shouldn't be happening in the United States of America. And elections,
not
again, have ramifications. Yeah.
Ramifications and consequences. And Mika's done an extraordinary job, and so grateful for your participation in it as well. I wanted to ask you, I remember when I served on the Armed Services Committee, the generals, I know you heard the same thing. The generals and the admirals, man, they would get a hold of me and they would say, What is going on? Why do you have all of these extremists bringing social issues into defense budget debates and holding up our attempts to make our troops readiness the best ever, our weapons the toughest ever, all this stuff. And so Republicans, it seems, over the past several years have been saying, oh, the Democrats, they've been trying to bring social issues into the Pentagon. That actually is always what they say is projection or confession. They're the ones doing it. And I'm just curious how mind-bending it is that the very people that say, oh, Democrats are making the military woke, when, of course, our military is stronger than it's ever been, they're the same ones that are bringing, debates about drag queens and extreme abortion positions into our defense budget and harming America's readiness.
Yeah. Well, and that, again, we take an oath to protect and defend our country, and our military is a very important way that we do that, our intelligence community as well, and the strength of our economy. Everything is connected in all of this. But what they're doing now is almost unexplainable. If you take what the House Republicans have done to our defense bill, as well as what the senator from Alabama is doing in the Senate to hold up these confirmations of people who have to be in the line of duty to take action to protect the American people, it just doesn't. It's again inexplicable, because again, we're all there to protect and defend our country. The bill that came out of the Armed Services Committee, a committee you served on, was very bipartisan. I think it had 1 no vote. It was just about 100% bipartisan until they came to the floor and started really messing with it. It's a tragedy. It's really sad. What I don't understand, and you've been so outspoken and so courageous as a former Republican member of Congress, whom I was proud to serve with, and we worked together on human rights in China and so many other issues. If we're the Republicans in our country, why are they not speaking out? Because this is, again, take back your party. This is a grand old party. It's done great things for our country. And what are we caught into, this situation. And, of course, the fact that they want to ignore the violations of law of a former president is inconsistent with their own statements. So, again, elections have ramifications. I'm happily in a place where I can continue to be working politically, but I would hope that we could be working in a unifying way to bring people together, Democrats, Republicans, declines to state, as we call them in California, so that we're there to honor our oath, to uphold the law. No one is above it, and to be respectful of women, because that, again, is really important for our country. I'm there for the children. And so my judgment about anybody is what they are doing is harmful to the children, whether it's the air they breathe, the climate crisis that we have, their education, children learning, parents earning. We have a wonderful country, and we have to recapture some of the greatness that, again, has been put in doubt by the current leadership in the Republican Party in the Congress of the United States.
You know, isn't it something, Mika, the speaker just talking about the wonderful country we have, talking about what the grand old party used to be.
Oh, no?
We used to talk about how great the country was, how great the military was. We used to defend our men and women in uniform. We didn't try to defund the FBI. We didn't trash American colleges and universities because we knew they were the best in the world. They're still the best in the world. We still have the strongest economy in the world, far stronger than any other economy. The state of California, which is supposed to be a liberal hot mess, has a bigger economy than Great Britain, than France, than Australia, I mean, you can go down the list, Mika, and all they want to do is they trash America. They trash America's military. Like the speaker said, we have a wonderful country, and you actually have Republican senators saying, I wish we could be more like Russia.
Yeah, no, and this show used to be a great place where you could have a chill conversation, different points of view. Republican, Democrat, everybody would come to the table. But now I think we're all feeling a little scared for our democracy. I'll speak for myself, because I know you have a little bit more confidence than me. I think democracies are imperfect. They're made up of people, and people are imperfect, and we're at an interesting turning point, Madam Speaker. And I'm curious, without asking you to speak personally about anybody, but you have, you're the gentleman who replaced you as the Speaker of the House, and other Republicans in the House and Republicans in general, not addressing the crimes that many people believe who committed against our democracy, not willing to confront the reality in front of us. What's the way forward through that?
Well, again, people have to know. Abraham Lincoln said public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. But for public sentiment to prevail, people have to know. So thank you for helping people know. But we have to do more in that regard so that people understand what is at stake in our country. And you see the ignoring of the violations of the law, potential alleged violations of the law of the former president being totally ignored. And that's why I keep saying there are a lot of Republicans in this country who are not speaking out about that. And that's a mystery to me. Thank you, Joe, for your courage to do so. But again, you're asking, we have to be hopeful. That's just the way we're an optimistic country. We'll be hopeful that as we go forward, we can do this in a unifying way. And we couldn't be better served in that regard than by President Joe Biden. This is a person who respects other points of view, a person who has a vision about our country that is consistent with the vision of our founders, that respects the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform to keep our freedom intact, and again, honors the aspirations of our children. He has a vision about the future. He knows the issues. He's strategic in how to get things done. And that's all intellectual. From the heart, he's the most empathetic, unifying person we could have. So I'm very excited about the reelection of the president. His Bidenomics are very kitchen table issues. how do we address the kitchen table concerns of America's working families? And that is the most important table in America, not the boardroom table, not the cabinet room table, but the kitchen table of America's working families, and Joe Biden is committed to that. So I know that there's a lot of attention that is being paid to all these trials, but the president yesterday, the former president, saying that he's going to redo the presidency and take more power. The genius of the Constitution is the separation of power. Separation of power. Checks and balances. That's what makes us a democracy, not a monarchy, which our founders rejected. And so, I mean, what does he do? He does it to get press. What do we do? All day, people talked about that. Instead, we should be talking about how we can work together to get the job done for our country, let the courts do what they need to do in terms of bring someone to justice or not, however that turns out. But the fact is that there was an assault on our Constitution on January 6th, a day that was designated to accept the results of the Electoral College. And the plan was to make sure that didn't happen. An assault on our Constitution, assault on the Congress of the United States, House and Senate, an assault on the Capitol, this temple of democracy to the world. And that's why it's very important for us to come back that same night and say, we're back, we're here, we're going to accept. And the sad part of that night, I mean, I can say as one who was one of the targets that day, it was pretty scary. But I have security. Many of the workers in the Capitol who maintained it all, many of the members and the staff and all the rest, they didn't. This was very dangerous. And the president wouldn't call off his, whatever you want to call them, and would not send in the National Guard. So that has to be addressed. But again, so that it never happens again, we must, again, in our elections, elect people, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, or whatevers, who are committed to the oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution. And in doing so, show up. Again, women learned when they showed up the day after Houzi's inauguration, it meant something so important to the country. And when women show up to vote, it will make a difference. And again, that doesn't mean just vote Democratic. It means make sure the person you vote for understands how important respect for women, a woman's right to choose, and the rest. And I say that as a devout practicing Catholic. I say that as mother of 5 children in 6 years and 1 week, which I keep reminding my Archbishop. Oof. But it's really so in any event, I just, when disrespect for women is something that I'm very passionate about, but very dispassionate about how we go about making the difference and making the change and getting this back. And again, in the last election, women voted, women made a difference. We almost held the House, even though it said we were going to lose 40 seats. We didn't. And we're so proud. You saw 2 of our new members on earlier. We're so proud of our freshman class. We're so proud of our new leadership, Hakeem Jeffries, Kathleen Karp, Pete Aguilar, and Ted Lieu from California. And we're, of course, very proud of our president and vice president of the United States. So we just have to get out there and make sure people understand that their vote makes a difference in their lives. And again, in terms of the people of Ukraine, that we are there for them and appreciate the fight they're making for democracy, for their democracy and for democracy writ large in the world, ignoring the comments of the former occasional occupant of the White House.
Exactly. And, you know, it's very interesting, as the governor of New York said when she was here, and what we've been saying for quite some time, Democrats would have actually held on to the House if a local judge in New York State hadn't intervened, and if they hadn't have ripped the redistricting process out of the board that actually had put together a map that, again, a bipartisan board, and that would have actually, that was the difference between Republicans and Democrats running the House.
I want to ask Speaker Pelosi about 2024. You talked a lot about President Biden's successful presidency so far, all the points on the board. It's a long list. I think arguably, objectively, one can say he has accomplished a great deal, maybe even historic proportions. But there's the question I have for you as a honoree on the very first 50 over 50 list with Forbes and Know Your Value. A lot of people are talking about the president's age as a factor in this, especially Republicans. What do you make of the criticism the president is getting that he's too old to have a second term?
I think the president should embrace his age, his experience, the knowledge that he brings to the job. Actually, the leader on the other side is not much younger. Well, you know, I don't like to use his name, but you know who I mean. He's not that much younger.
Yeah.
So I don't think age is a relative thing. It is, and I think this president, our country is very well served by his leadership. Again, his experience, his knowledge, and it counts for a lot. He really, under his first 2 years in office, and I take some credit for that in terms of congressional Democrats having the courage to go out there and vote for some of these things which were being mischaracterized by the other side, it was record-breaking, and we have more. There's still more work to be done in terms of women in the workplace and the rest. So we want him to do his unfinished business. I couldn't be prouder of him. And again, we're very fortunate that he is in that position. But again, age is relative. I was in L.A. For some Democratic stuff recently, and I met with Norman Lear, who's 100, going on 101. He was telling me some new shows he was involved in. I was meeting with Frank Gehry, a 90-something architect, showing me new buildings he's building throughout the world. And they were like, 80, he's a kid. But again, it's relative. He's younger than I am, so he's a kid to me as well, the president is.
Speaker,
so I think that it's an excuse. I think it's not a reason to be, it's an excuse, and I think that we just have to get on with this election for the children, for the people. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you.
Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, thank you very much for being on this morning. It's always good to see you. And, of course, you can read more on her new piece on Seneca Falls at MSNBC.com. And still ahead on Morning Joe, we will speak with the man Forbes magazine calls crypto's unlikely antagonist.